Today with me, Stuart Fraser, the founder of the Lyfeguard project. And I think that's a special episode for us because we love to hear the stories of the founders, especially in fintechs, how you're leveraging the modern technology and how it affects your business. And I would like maybe give an exposure to our listeners about your experience, what you have been doing, and how life gets you into doing the fintech startup.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, I think if I start with the problem of where we started, and then I can go more into the story. But I think where we really started from is the fact that the way we manage our personal information on a day-to-day basis is broken. If you think about, we're managing it on apps, emails, letters, notes, in our own heads. And I think that's problematic because when we need to find a bit of information, we don't know where to look, which means we don't understand it, which then means we can't plan ahead. In day-to-day life, it's kind of small irritations. It's, 15 minutes wasted looking for something here, a missed opportunity there. But it's when major life events happen that, these small irritations become really critical failures. I've co-founded Lyfeguard with my dad, Gary. He recognized this critical failure back in 2021 when he had two of his close friends pass away. Both men were in their 50s. And in both cases, the families were clearly overwhelmed with grief and didn't know what to do in terms of the administration after the death. They asked Gary, who's seen as a sensible person in the friendship group, to come in and help with the estate settlement. And it was a process that he found nigh on impossible because he couldn't find any of the information. The information he could find was misleading. And long story short, 18 months later, both estates were closed down. And he turned to me, basically said, "Son, if the same happened to me tomorrow, would you know where to find my information?" My answer was no. And that was kind of the birth behind Lyfeguard. However, it's not just about death because actually, particularly in the UK, it's a bit of a taboo topic. People don't like thinking about it, let alone planning for it. So we knew we had to shift the emphasis forward into life, giving people a day-to-day tool that was indispensable whilst also keeping that information there and fresh for the people who need it when that time comes. So Lyfeguard essentially is a place to organise information, access it on the go, connect in the finances, and not just make it a repository of information, give people like visualizations back so they can understand it, remind people on upcoming dates, and also give people the ability to share it onwards as much or as little information as they want at a point in time that suits them. And I think just to close off, finally, we deliver Lyfeguard via trusted professionals that the clients, are using on a regular basis, and crucially at moments that they're more likely to act. And to give a bit of kind of background to that. So for instance, we work with financial advisors who introduce Lyfeguard at the point of an annual review, or a private client lawyer, maybe during the process of will writing, because, they fit hand in glove in terms of the propositions, an insurance firm at the point of policy creation, or it might be a bank in a major life event. So essentially our mission for Lyfeguard is to make it the de facto place to manage life. So people are in control and the right people have access when it counts.
It totally makes sense. And I think it's not only the pretty cautious topic, not only for United Kingdom. No one wants to deal with the negative emotions, and people tend to think that everything is going well and not planned for the risky times, I would say, or risky events. So it's pretty understandable. What do you think enabled this project from the technology perspective? Because if we're talking about managing financial information, you can manage it with a piece of paper and, pencil. And people managed financial information for thousands of years. What do you think make a difference right now with your digital product? Because digitalization brought a lot of on the table in terms of how we're building the product itself. So what do you think the advantages are for you in this space?
100%. I mean, I think you have to look to open banking as the beginning when PSD2 was in 2017. And I was reflecting on the amount of innovation you've seen over the last, not even 10 years, right? We now pay for everything from our phones rather than having a wallet that you carry around, things like that. You don't realize how fast that has evolved over time. But I think for us, yes, we connect in open finance connections, so banks, credit cards, all the way through to pensions, loans, mortgages, etc. I think that's really important for a couple of reasons. The first one being the fact that it's easier to enter the information. You've got live totals coming through. And particularly in a use case like ours, if someone passes away, you need up-to-date asset and liability totals for the executor to have hold of. So the idea of having live connections into the platform is invaluable. I think second of all, it brings users back on a more regular basis, right? Because you can see a combined picture of your financial health, and it's not just your banks, it's every kind of financial instrument you can think of brought together into the platform. So while there's areas of Lyfeguard which might not need updating as regularly, you might update your will once a year, for instance. This is something that's changing in real time, and it also enables us to appeal to different types of end user. So if you imagine a financial advice client, and I'm being stereotypical here, but it's usually between 50 and 70, and particularly here in the UK, we need to engage their children and their beneficiaries as well. And actually, while someone in their 70s may be looking more towards retirement and creating that end-of-life plan, someone in their 30s is probably not thinking about that yet, but is very interested in accumulating wealth, understanding their finances, and bringing that side of things together. So I think from a technological perspective, open banking has been huge. I think away from Lyfeguard for a second, if you look at, as I mentioned earlier, the shifts that's happened over the last 7 or so years, I mean, 22% of the UK have a Monzo account. That's just mental, right? Compared to where we were beforehand. I think the other point of view is that open banking in July has reached 15 million UK users. That's a massive, massive figure. But I think there's more to be done in terms of we're at open banking, right? We have elements of open finance, but we know it's not regulated for in the UK as such yet. It's up to the providers who opens them connections. And I think there's some really exciting things, and we'll see another shift change when we get to open finance and then even further into open data.
And one part, as I mentioned, because like right now, there is a possibility that person holds the balances not just in fiat, but in crypto. Are you working on this part, and do you think is it something which is valuable for your customers?
100%. And it's something we're looking towards for sure. We're doing it very lightweight at the moment. I think we've got a Coinbase integration with MoneyHub, but we're talking more about, actual digital wallets. I think digital identity is becoming more and more important. Yes, it's something we're looking at for sure. We are just we've got a product roadmap as long as our arm, right? So it's trying to look at where we prioritize at the moment. Typically, our client base is a little bit older at the moment and therefore less interested in crypto. However, that being said, and I'm sure we'll come on to it in a little bit, but, demographic changes in the world at the moment mean, we've got aging populations, the greatest wealth transfer in history.
Yeah.
Financial services firms and fintechs need to focus on those that will inherit the wealth. So to answer your question, we're exploring it. Nothing massive in the pipeline at the moment, but it's something we're very interested in doing, which is similar to what we want to explore with AI as well. But we're kind of in the early days of that at the moment.
For me personally, it's always like a really precious moment where you go after the B2C or B2B2C model. And your product, you are targeting like B2C, but as we had discussion prior the recording, you mentioned that you are moving into the B2B2C model. So what exactly it means? How can you tell to our listeners like what you're trying to build in terms of as a platform?
We started very much direct to consumer. It kind of dawned upon us that actually there's a lot of professionals that are working with clients that need the access to this type of service. So let's take financial advisors. By B2B2C, what we mean is we license to financial advisors and they pass it on to their clients. What we're trying to build is a one-to-many model. So the idea that the client will be able to share their information with their financial advisor, their lawyer, their insurance firm, if they want to share it, with their accountant, with their family, with their friends, with whomever else in their life. We create very clear value propositions for both the financial advice firm and the client. For the financial advice firm, we're giving them much richer client information. I think one of the key things about Lyfeguard is what we've tried not to just solely focus on is the financial aspect. It's also the non-financial aspect as well. Because I think sometimes there's a afterthought to the non-financial information, but actually it's as important, if not more important. So we're not just totals which are in our bank or in our investment portfolio, right? There's softer peripheral information that sits around it. And we're giving advisors access to that in a way and other client portals out there aren't. I guess the other thing is because we designed it with B2C in mind to begin with, we've developed a platform that works really well for the client. And our whole ethos is if it works for the client, it works better for the advisor because the engagement level's going up. And I think finally, talking on the kind of softer, more peripheral information, it's who are the beneficiaries, who are the key contacts in the client's life? Because there's this horrible statistic at the moment in financial advice when a client passes away, the person inheriting the money will leave that advisor 90% of the time. that's a scary thought for the industry. And therefore what we're trying to do is enable the advisors to understand who the key contacts are in their clients' lives, but also uniquely about a platform, we enable the client to share their information onwards. So it's not siloed between the client and the advisor. Actually, the client sits in the middle and they share it with who they want to share it with, right? And that's where we've kind of focused in wealth management to begin with. But we see this going into private client law, as I mentioned, with will writing, and the ability to also continue having access to information, the lawyer. So if the client passes away, they can help with the estate administration. And that's what we're trying to do. Client at the center, all the professionals, family, and information in one place so people can seamlessly manage their lives.
That's a pretty decent idea and the mission. And do you think there are competitors on the market which is trying to do the same with the managing personal financial information?
In terms of personal finance management, yes, there are. There have been for quite a while now. The ability to see kind of net worth positions, bank balances, transactions, all of that stuff, and they do it really well. But where I see kind of Lyfeguard as the intersection between is that cloud storage, because we are to an extent replicating what you see out there with cloud storage. But what we're trying to do with it is, rather than just saying store stuff here, we take people through question answer based formats, so to ensure the thoroughness of the information entry. And then there's end of life solutions. So the idea of storing something in a place for family and friends to get access to. We think those platforms are fantastic. It's where we started, but we saw some trepidation for our users to engage with it when it was propositioned as an end of life play. So we see it as kind of the intersection between the three: personal finance management, information management, and an end of life piece as well. So certainly players doing it. Whether there's a platform out there doing all three, I'm not sure. And I think that's where our kind of unique gap is.
And you mentioned the cloud storage. And I think that's one of the biggest part with the personal financial information, because even one of the case, Apple Pay doesn't work in Turkey. If you are running an account in Turkish bank, you would not get the card which is enabled by Apple Pay or Google Pay, because Turkey is requiring Apple to host the servers physically in Turkey. And that makes an issue with the information. What do you think in your case? Is it really important who and where the data is stored? Who has an access? Is it privately encrypted information which is stored on the mobile device of the customer or in web browser, whatever, or just the local file? Or is it application, or are you using cloud? And what do you think about the privacy and management of information?
Privacy and the security of the information is by far and away the biggest thing that we focus on at Lyfeguard. We knew when we developed the platform, if we didn't have that secure nature, we didn't have a business, essentially. In terms of where data is stored, we're currently focusing on the UK. We think that's where we need to get a handle of first, and then we will look to expand elsewhere. Clearly, data sovereignty in each of the applicable regions. In terms of the encryption of the data, we use AES 256-bit encryption in transit and rest. So no one, even internally within Lyfeguard, can see the information apart from the core accounting details you need, such as, email and bits and pieces like that. But really, when we were designing the platform, we knew that the security, but also giving the users the ability to be very granular with what they share with whom. So for instance, you could go on there and just share your passport section with someone, or you could share everything. Do you know what I mean? It can be very granular in what you're sharing. And I think, again, even in the B2B2C model, the business will ask the client for some permissions. But at the end of the day, if the client wants to say no, or they want to restrict certain areas, they can. And that's putting them back in control, which is kind of reversing what has been the standard for quite a while. It's their information. They should control it. They should decide who gets access. And then as a business, Lyfeguard, we protect it.
It sounds for me like a really good thought through access management system or access control system. I don't know, if you go into modern operation systems, there are controls which is allowing to do the specific sections or specific permissions to end customers, like Unix system or whatever. So good catch there. I think that's why I asked this question. It might be the first question. If I'm the person who is holding a specific wealth, the first thing which I want to know how you're actually encrypting and storing my data. The next question is about the integrity and the proper visibility with the financial information coming from the open banking. Because in one way, PSD2 enabled certain things, but is this good enough for you, or what are the challenges with the open banking for getting the personal financial information? Because is it sufficient to make the picture that you would like to store in your system, or something needs an enhancement?
Simply no, I'd love a lot more to be able to enrich it. So I can't wait for whatever they're calling it. I think it's the Open Data Act or something like that, but the Open Finance Regulation essentially to go through. So we use MoneyHub as an open finance provider. They are fantastic. Their business model is using open banking, but also liaising with the other financial instruments to be able to get connections into them. We've got to bear in mind they're not made to open up them connections, right? That being said, clearly open finance is optional and therefore the whole market hasn't opened up their APIs. This again plays into this fragmented idea of our information, right? So we've got really good open banking feeds coming through. We've got an element of open finance, but not all of it. And I think the open finance part is really crucial because if you're thinking about actually managing our personal finances, right? If you think about our net worth totals and what actually makes up the significant proportion of it, it's not what's in our banks, it's what's in property, it's what's in investments, it's what's in our pensions. And therefore, when there's fully open connections at every type of financial vehicle, I think that's going to be huge. Then take that one step further, open data. When, there's connections into utility contracts or insurance policies. And that again is really exciting for us as a business because this is the space that we're playing in. The idea of reducing manual entry, having real-time information in there, and then using that in such a way to create better outcomes for the end user, right? And I think that's one of the most exciting things. So no, not good enough as of yet. I think not diminishing the impact of open banking whatsoever, but I think we now need to really accelerate open finance and open data because I think some of the benefits you've seen with open banking in terms of customer propositions improving, better outcomes, more competition in the market, like fintech's exploded, right? Yeah. So it's really exciting. And I think you're going to see that again with open finance and then open data. So yeah, we'd love that to come to fruition soon.
Another maybe level that I'm thinking of is using AI agents because usually like if you have certain assets or transactions, it might be found in certain digital way in your email or something. Then you can understand that, okay, by this notification, I understand that the person has an access to system A, B, C, D, which is kind of given an availability to understand specific assets or specific accesses to the systems, even if the person did register it manually. So do you think there is a path for your product to extend and enhance by using AI agents to collect and fill information on behalf of the customer?
100%. I get asked this a lot, and I think there's a crucial distinction to make with this. And I think as a business, we completely see the use cases for it. I mean, the idea of having AI to be able to help the user understand their information or pre-populate first, but then build the information back up in a specific use case that they need. I think that'd be fantastic. And I think there's some really exciting possibilities with it. I think there's another side of it, and this is something we're exploring at the moment, is the perception of the security of AI. So we need our customers to feel comfortable with AI in the platform. And there's still data out there that says people don't fully trust open banking entirely. And then there's this kind of a little bit of a mistrust of AI, I think, in the general population. And you put that in with all their personal information in one place. And I think we just need to be careful how we go about it. So we're doing some customer research in a moment to see what the kind of demand for it is. I think the likely first scenario is we will create a different tier of subscription or something like that that has a kind of, you can specifically choose whether you want the AI or not. But I think when we do go for it, we will be fundamentally focused on the transparency, how the AI is making the decisions and really enabling the user to see that, because I think that's very important as well. So in summary, yes, completely see the use cases. We want to begin developing that. I think we just need to ensure that there's the demand for it first. We know we can deliver it in a secure way.
And it brings us to the logical, like a bridge for the customer perception. What do you think? And because it's really, really cautious area where you have to be really careful with the communication, product positioning for the market. Like what are the top lessons that you got by running this product almost for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken? Like what are the things that you think essential for the customers for positioning products like that?
To be honest, I think it depends which how the customer's entering Lyfeguard. So if they're going via a financial advisor, I think what we're very much focused on is a dual message. So the first one being why it's going to benefit your relationship with you and your advisor. And then a separate message saying, actually, no, apart from that, this is for you. This is a platform that will help you gain peace of mind. You'll know where things are. You'll begin understanding your information. You have a clear idea of your finances, and you'll know that your family and friends have access to information when it counts. So that messaging never changes. I think it depends which type of client that we're talking to, where you might up a little bit more on the kind of the financial management side, and the other part on kind of, you know, if they're an older client, maybe more on the the estate management and legacy planning side. But I think, we've come on leaps and bounds of our messaging over the last 2 years. I mean, as I said, we started from a purely end of life position. We began moving away from that and then too much because we dropped that from our story altogether. And actually, I think it's very crucial to our story because it gives us a why. And to be clear, we still are doing this to achieve that end mission. It's just the longer way around of doing it to ease perception in. But yeah, I think, we started from a very much end of life play. We were then B2C. We've gone B2B to C because we think actually partnering with professionals where this just makes sense and their clients are more willing to engage with this type of service makes it much easier to get our proposition across.
If we will say like the core is B2B to C model and there are agents, can those be agents, AI agents? Like, because if someone is advising you, maybe that's a platform that you can benefit from, like modern approach by someone as AI taken and say, okay, actually you can do much better in financial terms if you will do that and that, which can be not real human.
Where I see it going is I think you're going to retain the complete human interaction with the advisor. I think there could be a level of clientele that will value and want that service. However, there's a massive advice gap in the UK. Yeah. I think only 9% of the UK are advised. And that's problematic because we've actually got very low financial literacy here as well. Then you add wealth transfer onto that as well, when people are inheriting wealth and they've not really had that much money before. That all coming together paints the perfect kind of use case for what you just said in terms of actually, yes, if there's an AI agent that can look at the financial situation and help make recommendations off the back of it that will lead to better outcomes, for sure. Why not? Again, it's just ensuring there's no, hallucinations of the AI and all of that, because that's clearly a worry. We need to ensure there's no bias as well, or at least limit it. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the way you will see financial advice go, to be able to service those who aren't advised currently.
That shows the total trend. Like we see that stable coins are coming in, and what is really important with the stable coins, the protocols for AI agents are coming up. So I think we'll see in, next 2-3 years, we'll see a lot of AI agents doing the things with our money, and maybe advising will be part of them. So coming back to your product, what do you think the hardest lesson that you had to learn with this product? Like, because my experience being a founder with any type of the company, you actually don't see all the obstacles that you will meet on this road. So what is the hardest lesson that you learned so far by doing this project?
Well, that's a great question. There's been lots, if I'm honest with you.
Select only one, or few.
I'll select only one. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've faced, and it probably stems again a little bit from the messaging conversation, is actually lesson and learning, I guess, is it's all good what we're doing, right? You can tell the story and you can say, we're organizing your information in one place, we're making life easier and enabling you to share it. But what we've learned, definitely over the past year, is we need to be much more purpose-driven about getting people into the platform. And I think that's something that we naively didn't really recognize to begin with. We thought, this is an indispensable tool that people are going to use. It's going to safeguard their families. Why wouldn't you use it? But actually now we're thinking, right, and it kind of lends to why we went B2B to C. It's like, what's the reason that someone's going to begin using this? So in terms of some nice use cases, if someone's taking out a mortgage application, can we use the transactional data in there? Can we use all the KYC documentation and then speed along that process massively? I've mentioned will writing, I've mentioned annual reviews. There's so many different nice use cases when people are coming in, but it has to be in a moment of time where someone wants to take that action. And if you can prove that value up front and then show them all the rest that's in there, that's exciting. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we initially faced, is why aren't people initially loving this? And it's like, right, we need to give people a reason to do it, because we openly say this isn't it's not the sexiest topic in the world, organizing your life and planning your legacy, but it's fundamentally important, and it's something that people shouldn't procrastinate on, but it's something we do, and that's just fact. So unless we give people a reason and a purpose to begin using the platform, that was where we kind of got stuck initially, and we're beginning to see the kind of benefits of actually going from much purpose-driven. This is why they're getting involved in the platform in the first place, and then they can begin using the rest of it.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Like a lot of startups underestimating the cost of acquisition and how the funnel for acquisition of the customers looks like, because the always 99% perception is that, okay, we have a new technology and it solves the real case for the market, but then market we've done it old way and we will continue to do it old way, and you need to put the resources for convincing and converting the customers. With the time, as we see with the digital banks, I still remember as a company, Dash Devs, we were implementing the digital bank in 2018, and there was a lot of like discussions. Is it really going to replace the branches? Like, oh, only 40% of the bank customers are using mobile applications for taking a look on the balance. And then here we are in 2025 when no one goes to the branch for doing anything, even opening an account. I think that's a momentum when we kind of in a position when we not properly estimating our digital assets, because it's not just about access to the fiat accounts. It's like other types of the assets, non-fiat, because crypto is definitely coming into our world. So yeah, I think that's a momentum where the technology gives an ability, but people are not really shifted their mind to properly understand how it's important to collect and properly store and then share their not even the financial information with their families, relatives, and financial advisors. The last section of our podcast is a book recommendation. Do you have anything that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is by far and away my favorite book. First and foremost, the ability that he gets across that the way we manage money is very emotional and it's not logical is a really interesting point. And it made me go back through my finance and look at it from why are you actually making these financial decisions? And then you look back at kind of early lived experiences. And I just find that bit really fascinating. And I think, it's the idea, and I think there's two different scenarios that he paints in it. Say someone grew up managing their finances early on in the 2008 financial crisis. They began investing in 2010 when it was a bull market. They have very different perceptions of investment just from that alone. And that will shape the financial decisions they make in the future. And I find that whole concept very interesting. I think the second part of it is the ability. I think sometimes when people talk about investment, there's kind of a bit of bravado that you can do it really well. And there's and don't get me wrong, you can, but the average person isn't spending hours and hours and hours researching the investment market. They might do, but it's not going to be kind of a full-time job, right? And I think he gets the point across that investing is about patience, or the winners are usually about patience. Timing the market's much better than timing the market, I think is the phrase used. Warren Buffett, for instance, made 98% of his fortunes after the age of 52, which paints that perfectly. Finally, it's such a beautifully written book. And I think the final bit he leaves you with is the idea that if you know what enough is, that's a superpower. So rather than, you have this goal, you get there and then you continually chasing the next one, then you start making, silly decisions to chase, more and more and more. There is a superpower in going, when I achieve that, that's enough. And I think that's a really nice message behind, the way to manage our finances.
Yeah, it's really powerful book, and thank you for recommending. And my book for today is by Shiraz Shaim, which is Positive Intelligence. And actually, it a little bit overlaps with how we're perceiving the world. It's like we have own internal judges. There are different types, and they stimulate in our algorithm how we're dealing with the world, and especially I think with the money. So Positive Intelligence, really interesting book, and really recommend to our listeners. And Fraser, I would like to thank you for coming to our podcast. It's really insightful overview of the business and challenges when you were starting with the B2C model and then growing into B2B2C, coming through the agents and managing financial information. It is really insightful and I think really interesting to our listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.